5 minutes.
Good morning to you all, and good morning to you, Ambassador Bolton, John. It's wonderful to see you again in Israel. You've been a great friend of Israel for many years, and a personal friend of mine for many years, and you have been an outstanding champion of the American-Israel alliance. And I have to say that that alliance is at an all-time high. I think it's reached unprecedented heights under the leadership of President Trump. And I think that America has no greater friend than Israel, and Israel has no greater friend and ally than the United States. Your visit is an opportunity to strengthen that alliance even further, as well as to discuss how best to address the enormous challenges we face together in the Middle East, particularly at this sensitive time. As you know, Iran has long been conducting a campaign of aggression and terror across the region, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and elsewhere. When sanctions against Iran were removed a few years ago as part of the nuclear deal, and tens of billions of dollars began to pour into Iran's coffers, Iran's aggression increased dramatically. Now, I want to state this very clearly. The supporters of the Iran deal argued that the infusion of cash, massive cash, into Iran's economy would moderate Iran. They argued that Iran would become inward focused, would start nation building. And in fact, the opposite has happened. The very opposite has happened. Iran used those hundreds of billions of dollars to fund empire building, not nation building. That is the stamping of one state after the other and the devouring of one state after another in the Middle East. Those who argue that Iran's aggression began after the recent actions, I think they're not living on the same planet. This is completely false. We in Israel saw Iran's aggression in their increased efforts to establish Iranian military bases in Syria, in their increased efforts to provide sophisticated weapons to Hezbollah, in their increased financial support for terror proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This increased right after the deal, with the removal of sanctions. We in Israel could see an explosion of terror and aggression. Likewise, our Arab neighbors saw exactly the same thing. They saw Iran's aggression and Iran's increased support for terror groups that threatened them, from the Shiite militias in Iraq to the Houthis in Yemen. Well before Iran's act of aggression of recent weeks, such as the attacks on oil tankers and the downing of an American drone, Iranian forces fired dozens of rockets into Israeli territories and flew drones into Israeli airspace. Iran also fired rockets deep into Saudi Arabia and, through their proxies, endangered international shipping lanes. This is all months and years ago. After the deal, but before recent events, Iran has been on a campaign of aggression. Those who describe the recent actions as somehow opening a hornet's nest are living on another planet. In fact, the one thing that has changed for those of us who live in the Middle East is not that Iran is attacking its neighbors or brazenly perpetrating wanton aggression. What's new is that now, thanks to crippling American sanctions, Iran is facing unprecedented economic pressure as a result of its aggression. So I was pleased to hear President Trump make clear yesterday that pressure will continue and that pressure will increase. And I look forward to discussing this and other issues that affect the stability of our region with you, Mr. Bolton, John. I also want to thank you for your willingness to participate on Tuesday in a historic meeting that will bring together the national security advisors of the United States, Russia, and Israel. The mere fact that such a high-level meeting is taking place between the great powers, the United States of America and Russia, here in Israel, I think is unprecedented. It speaks loudly about the nature of Israel's standing among the nations, and in this case among two of the greatest nations on earth. I hope and expect that this dialogue will be fruitful. I'm confident that it's possible to both find common ground and chart a path forward that will help promote security and stability in the region, particularly in Syria. John, let me conclude by saying again what a pleasure it is to see you in Jerusalem. Welcome to Israel. Welcome to Jerusalem. Welcome, friend.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back in Jerusalem to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his team. I appreciate the Prime Minister's leadership and vision, his friendship, and his true and lasting partnership with the United States, demonstrated repeatedly when courage and persistence are required. Although I'm here for a previously scheduled trilateral meeting of the National Security Advisors of Israel, Russia, and the United States, hosted by Prime Minister Netanyahu, current circumstances in the region make our conversations even more timely. I welcome the opportunity to strengthen even further the deep cooperation between the United States and Israel at this particularly significant point, and to engage in strategic discussions with Russia and Israel together. Certainly, there should be no doubt that under Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, the United States-Israel security relationship has never been stronger. And it takes strong leaders to make strong commitments, especially in perilous times. This administration has recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moved the U.S. Embassy here, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and brought military cooperation between the two countries to new levels. These are not mere flourishes of rhetoric, which too often characterize international relations. These are concrete realities, and I'm sure there will be more to come. Prime Minister Netanyahu's strong relationships with both President Trump and President Putin augur well for the chances of success and greater alignment of the policies of these three great countries in a number of critical security issues. President Trump looks forward to meeting with President Putin at the upcoming G20 summit in Osaka, Japan in the next few days, where many of these same issues will be discussed. I hope we can lay the groundwork for this meeting over the next several days here in Jerusalem. And as we meet, threats to international peace and security in the Middle East and around the world are on the rise. Iran's continued pursuit of nuclear weapons, its threats to exceed the limits set in the failed Iran nuclear deal in the coming days, its continuing buildup of menacing Quds Force capabilities in Syria and Iraq, its supply of sophisticated drones, missiles, and other advanced weapons to hostile surrogate forces in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Afghanistan, and its continued threats and acts of aggression against Israel, our allies in the Arabian Gulf, and against U.S. personnel and assets across the Middle East are not signs of a nation seeking peace. Neither Iran nor any other hostile actor should mistake U.S. prudence and discretion for weakness. No one has granted them a hunting license in the Middle East. As President Trump said on Friday, our military is rebuilt, new, and ready to go, by far the best in the world. Sanctions are biting, and more added last night. Iran can never have nuclear weapons, not against the USA and not against the world. And as he made clear yesterday, referring to his earlier remarks, the president said, "I just stopped the strike from going forward at this time." We expect that the new sanctions President Trump referred to in preparation for some weeks will be announced publicly on Monday. Stay tuned. I'm delighted to be in Israel once again and look forward to our coming discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.